this panel is about leadership. I'm not sure why I'm on it, but there you go. But the moderator is actually a very good friend of mine. She doesn't really take her own advice because she's not very nice to me. She beats me at tennis every weekend. But we met first. She worked for me at Sundance Channel. She's, as you know, since moved on to Google. She's the kind of personification of everything that's great about your generation. She works harder than anybody else I've ever met. She obsesses about her career, but also doing things to a T and doing them better than perfect. And she's really proven a very nimble and innovative thinker in that she's moved from network to network and is now at Google, really leading change there. So a really good friend, really great person to get to know, Carolyn Castro.
Thank you. So we're going to start this a little bit differently. In all the other panels, you've probably heard everybody recite their bios. These are people who have such extensive experience that we couldn't bear to have everybody go through the entire thing. So we challenged them to come up with...
Which means we're old.
We challenged them to come up with 140 character bios and telling their story. So I'll read them out to you in case you can't actually see what's behind me. But I'll start with Emery, since he's next to me. So Emery is a connoisseur of TV and movies who happens to work at one of the world's top media companies, A+E Networks. Life is entertaining, 15 years strong. Does that mean you've been there for 15 years?
Yeah, it'll be 16 in January.
It's incredible.
Long time.
Evan is in the creative business where he specializes in leading change. His latest work is Pivot, a channel dedicated to TV that matters. Next we have Craig. Technology development and standards at HBO. Have worked in TV since pulling camera cables in high school. Grew up in Georgia. Why am in NYC? Then we have Scott. Scott is CMO of the Weather Channel. Past CMO, CNN, HLN, TNT. Loves media, yoga, his family. 1960s movie posters. It's amazing out there. I believe that is that Weather Channel's
Count those characters.
I
think he cheated.
Totally. I counted. I didn't. I guess you all know like what 140 characters is automatically, but I had to count.
Yeah.
I had to count.
And finally, we have Kathleen. Stanford to journalist to programmer to president. Runs HGTV, DIY, and GAC, which is Great American Country. I had to cut that one down, sorry. Formerly with Food Network and CBS News, never a foodie, forever a news junkie. And everybody who has a Twitter handle also, it's listed up here, so you guys, if you want, can follow them or their channels. Mine you already heard from me, but mine is on the lower right. You can read it. We're going to start. This is about leadership. This panel. We want to start by actually defining what it is to be a leader. And I'm going to turn to Kathleen first. Actually, how do you define a leader?
Well, I mean, a leader in its simplest terms is the person who is leading the team to where the team needs to go. I think, though, frankly, the best leaders are the ones who kind of end there accidentally, because those are the people who were good at their jobs, were passionate at their jobs, and they suddenly found themselves leading a team, as opposed to those people who just want to be the boss. I think there's a big difference between somebody who wants to be the boss and somebody who gets tapped on their head throughout their career to continue to lead a bigger and bigger team.
Scott, I'm going to go to you next. How do you define a leader? Or what other qualities of a leader do you see?
Well, to me, whether you're the leader or the follower, if you're going to be in the media, the thing that you should want to do is to do stuff, like to make stuff. And so to me, the person who winds up being the leader and like is the person who wants the ball because they want to make stuff and they want to lead others in making stuff too. It's an incredibly collaborative business. There are a few types of jobs in this world that are, singular pursuits you do by yourself, but most of it is not. Most of it you are part of a large group, and the leader winds up being the person that almost everybody in the room almost feels like that person should be our leader. It doesn't mean they're the owner or the only person doing it, but you're like the person who wants everybody else to succeed.
Those are great qualities that you guys all demonstrate. So what role does leadership play in your positions? I'm going to turn to Evan next. So
I think there are a lot of the definition of leadership is changing because in a linear world, when the world kind of when there were 3 networks and everything just moved forward, or television just talked at you and didn't talk back, it's a different place now than when I was younger. And I think in that evolution, there's been a shift. There's a difference between leadership and authority. I think that a lot of people confuse authority for leadership. Just because you've been given a job as a manager doesn't mean you're a leader. It just means you sign the checks. And there's a major difference between the two. So what I've strived to do over the last really 10 years specifically, as I've evolved from kind of a team member to a team leader, is to lead without authority. I'm asking you to come with me because you believe in what I'm saying, not because I'm telling you to. And that is very difficult, because it's very easy to say, you have to do this because I sign your checks. It's another thing to do it to say, I want you to join me as we charge up that hill. And those are 2 very different things. So, and everyone in this room, even though you may not be the boss, you can lead without authority. And if you start doing that, I think you've done that your whole career. If you can do that, if you can lead without being the boss, if you can lead without actually having the authority, then when it is time to actually have the authority too, you won't have to demand it. It'll just be given to you.
People choose to follow you.
That's exactly right.
And Craig, since you just started speaking, actually, so I'd love to hear some more from you about how you have also done this, because you've, as you mentioned, worked in TV since pulling camera cables, which is obviously a big growth in leadership. So can you talk about how you were able to become a leader?
Yeah, part of it is I would characterize it as being indispensable. And I think in a technology sense where people don't understand the words, the jargon, everything else, there's this, people come to you for help, and providing that help is actually really beneficial, because you become effectively indispensable, but you also become a go-to person in a more broad sense. And I think one of the ways that I do that is that people call me and I'll take the time. I have literally like open office hours, and people come and pose questions and what do you want to talk about? And part of it is I will get you the answer to any question within 2 transfers of the phone. And it may be something I know nothing about, but I at least know enough about the organization, what's being done by whom and where, that I can actually get somebody the answer. And then it becomes the earned leadership thing. People come for help. It may not be that I'm the leader. It may be that just I'm a nice guy and I help them out of thorny situations. And technology is intimidating, and that has been really good for me.
And Emery, I think since we know been at your company for 15 years, you obviously have also had to transform yourself from, I guess, entry level maybe?
Yeah, I started
leader?
I started as the assistant in my department.
Wow.
And so now I'm a vice president. But along the way, I think similar to what Evan and Craig were just saying, I was working in a leadership role, maybe unbeknownst to me, but there were certain areas, there were ideas, having a vision and having ideas that you bring to the company, and then getting people to buy in, and also having a plan to fulfill the vision. So it's good to have a good idea, but you need to think it through and have a plan. And then when you start implementing that and getting people to support that really helps gain momentum. And you really, before you know it, you're in this position of a leader. Yeah. So.
And I'll go to the end now as well. Can you talk a little bit about how you guys became leaders? I'll go to Kathleen first.
What was the question?
Sorry, how did you become a leader in your roles? I think you've both moved around a little bit more, and so I'm wondering, was it a process of throughout your different companies that you worked for that you developed additional leadership qualities, or?
Well, for me, my dream was to work at a media company, and prior to that I had worked at advertising agencies and always on media accounts. I really wanted to get to that place, and I think that when I was lucky enough to get that first job, it meant I had to move from Manhattan to Atlanta, Georgia, so I did the other way, right, and go to work at Ted Turner's company when he had just launched TNT. And I was just so happy to be there that I was always I didn't care what the project was. I would be like I want to do that. I want to help somebody else do that. It never occurred to me to look and go, well, that project's going to further my career. That one's going to make me do. Like, I didn't care at all. I was just so happy to be there. And I see this distinction with people coming into the industry all the time. There's the ones who the first conversation I have with them, they're like, well, am I better off spending my time doing this? Will I get promoted if I do that? Well, I was like, and then there's the people who are like, I want to try this now. And it's like and that person is going to rise faster because they're there about the work.
Yeah.
Kathleen, I know you also had you had some other industries even that you were working in. Can you talk a little bit about how you developed your leadership through that?
Well, I wanted to be actually I was a journalist for most of my career, a lot of my career, and sort of made a switch more for family reasons because it was a little hard to be covering international news and raising 3 children with a journalist husband. So that was really why I made the switch to cable. But I did similarly to Emory. I started as an assistant. And I think when you're looking for your first job, I personally think, besides being an intern, which I really hope every single one of you is doing as many internships as you can, but I think starting as an assistant to somebody who has a job that you want is one of the most valuable things you can do, because you're then an advantage point to get to know, to be a mentee, to shadow somebody whose job you might want to have someday. And it's also a great audition platform. If you show up and you are the most enthusiastic and the most helpful and the most supportive assistant that any executive has ever had, you are going to rise really, really fast. And I learned a lot of my leadership from following my boss as her assistant, but I had the stage to do it because I was in front of somebody who really was important at CBS and who mentored me and sort of pulled me along. So I really hope that as you're all out looking for careers, that first job, which is the hardest job to get, really look hard at things like being the assistant to somebody, because that is an open door if you handle it well.
And I think on that topic, you just mentioned that you had someone who helped mentor you. I'd love to hear more about mentorship and a role model that has played a role in your career.
Oh, there are many. I mean, I think you should be. I've heard a few of your panelists say today about being a mentor. I agree with Michael Smith. I love mentoring people. I get a lot out of it. But you should really ask people to be a mentor to you. It's flattering to those of us who get asked, and we all remember what it was like when we were first starting out. So you should really ask for somebody to help you out, give you advice, set up an email relationship with people. I have done it often in my career when I was younger, starting out, and it's always paid off. It's just really good to find those people who are willing to give back a little bit, even if it's just, can I come with you to a meeting? Can I sit in the back of the room and listen? Ask to do things like that, because they will get you very far.
And
I was going to add one thing to that, because I would describe it as intellectual curiosity. The mentor-mentee relationship is good, but also think that you're a cog in a giant corporation, and that corporation has a history, and there's a lot of institutional knowledge that's floating around. Be a sponge. Talk to people. Network. Find out how they solved the same problems 10 years ago that they're up against now. And that relationship building, your curiosity about the overall company actually does find its way to helping you out.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say similarly, I paid attention to what the leaders in my company were doing. And so I might not directly report to someone, but when we had company meetings, presentations, when the CEO would present, I would focus on how he carried himself, how he spoke about the company, because I also was going out there to be an advocate for the company, a liaison with our client base day to day. So to understand his vision, remix it for myself, so I could be authentic when I relay it, was also very helpful in my growth as a leader as well.
Can I add something to that? Because a point was brought up that I hadn't thought about it until they said it. There is a tendency when you join a company, even whether you join it well into your career or just starting out, to think that it's all about going forward and everything. But it is great. It's not only flattering to be asked by somebody like, tell me about the old days. It's really helpful for you to learn kind of how the company that you join or how the industry addressed challenges 15 years ago or 10 years ago, because those the next challenges are many times echoes of challenges that happened 10 years ago or 15 years ago. And so it's helpful for people like who've been in the industry a long time. It's fun for us to talk about those things, but inside there are lessons that will make you smarter about the business. And it's not just being nostalgic. It's really, sometimes the answers are back there. And you should be a student of this industry, not just what's coming next and what people are writing about now.
Did everybody here read Harry Potter? So, Marauder's map. I mean, when you talk to somebody who's been through the industry for a number of years, they can provide you that map, the secret passageways, the shortcuts to get the stuff done. But I think the most important thing is a common language. If you're standing up in front of a room full of senior executives and you're talking a language that they don't understand, they will not listen to you. It's shame, but it's the truth. If you can speak a common language, which is often at a place like HBO, it's actually probably personified. There is put a pin in it. That phrase was invented at HBO. There are these phrases that we now repeat in the industry over and over again because they started at a place like that or a place like Scripps. And understanding those key catchphrases that will get the executives nodding yes in agreement, and then you can present your idea, that's the key. You got to get them on your side first, and that's leadership.
That brings up another question, actually. So as the environment's changing, people are coming in, they're speaking a different language. As the leader and as the executive that you're talking about, them pitching to, how do you guys actually, stay ahead of that and continue to maintain your leadership throughout all of this change that's going on around you?
I do stuff like this. I mean, this is, to me, we were just talking about how you crack the code of speaking to your generation. And my answer was just dive in. I mean, it's why I teach at NYU. It's why I would love to say I do this because I'm a nice person. It's not true, and those who know me well know that that's true. I do it for education. I do it so that I can stay ahead of the curve. I strive to understand this generation, and that helps lead change. And in this industry, leading change is probably one of the more important aspects of the industry because it's changing so fast every day.
And that's an interpersonal version that's the soft side of the business, like marketing. On the technology side, it's changing constantly, and that is just a job survival of staying on top of it and understanding how much is chaff. I have a real problem. I would never be a good investor because a lot of the VC community funds things that are disruptive and have no intention of making a product. Where in an engineering sense, the sensibility is solve this problem, make this product, make it cost efficient, make it in time and on budget and all that. And that's not necessarily what's in vogue today. So for me, that's been a real stress point. But cutting through the chaff of what's important and what's not is something that you have to instill as a leader communicating.
Just at the Weather Channel, I know it's a brand that's been around your whole lives. On the executive leadership team, the 10 people who kind of run the company worldwide, I'm one of them, and I'm the oldest person. It is a very young company, and it's a digital company. It's a mobile company that happens to have a television platform. So I had to get used to that. It's one of the reasons I went there, because that's the way the world is going, and I'm trying to understand it better. I'm trying to understand the data and how the data can lead us to insights into consumers that might lead us to what should we make for them in this industry on television or any platform. The panel that was earlier today about research, when I joined the industry 25 years ago, 30 years ago, if you said to me, go and look for a research job, I would have laughed at you. I was like, why do I want to do that? I'm not like that kind of person. What they said at that panel this morning, you should pay a lot of attention to. It is a sexy place to be. It's really interesting. It's fascinating. If I was coming into the industry right now, I would totally consider like a job in research and audience insights and data analytics. That's the cool place right now.
Oh, big data. Use the trendy term.
Yeah, big data. I use data analytics. Isn't that like
big data?
I didn't even know what that meant like 2 months ago.
And I think with the change, you have to define what the change is. When I first started at A&E, our top show was Murder, She Wrote and Biography. and so, we've come a long way in the 15 years, of our original programming. And it's all been set, by the vision we've had by our senior executives, by the employees, to really, we made the decision to change. And I think, the idea behind it is being poised for growth. And that's what you do in your careers, that's what you do personally, and that's what you also want to see your company do. Even history, used to be a World War II, black and white program, your grandfather's network, and now, we have the mantra that, if it happened 2 minutes ago, it's history. It's history made every day. And so, in the forums where we are, so we keep deciding how to reposition ourselves for growth, and how do you make the decision to get to the next level.
So I'd love to turn to what it is that, because everybody here is trying to strive to be who you are. What are the opportunities that students have, or entry-level people have in your companies to lead? Because leadership, I think, gets conflated with authority or executive, but obviously there's leadership at every level that we've talked about. What are some of those opportunities? Maybe who wants to speak to this first?
Well, I'll use you as an example. So we started a culture committee in my last job, and the idea there was to make the place a better place to work, but I actually had a secret agenda, which was to cultivate the next generation of leaders, and to do it from the youngest ranks. And so Karen jumped on that, even though she had a full-time job. She jumped on the culture committee. She captained the softball team. She's a very good softball player. And as a consequence, she got to know a lot of people across the enterprise that she wouldn't have otherwise known. And there were a number of people, including Jenny Morris, who I then stole and took with me to my new job. Again, she was not that well known at the company. She was in a very specific role, but because she took an opportunity to get to do stuff outside of her job description, to do stuff that she wasn't being paid for, to help create events, activities, development programs that helped young people at the company really get ahead. Everybody knew who she was suddenly. And that's part of leadership, popularity. But second part of it is that she showed that she had a desire to help the company get ahead, despite the fact that she wasn't necessarily being compensated for that thing. So you take those opportunities. They will exist. And NAMIC and WICT and all those other organizations, that's another good example of we were just talking, you knew somebody I knew because you knew each other on WICT. Those are really, really good opportunities to put yourself in a leadership position without necessarily having it meet your bottom line.
Does everyone know what NAMIC and WICT are here? No? So NAMIC is National Association of Multi-Ethnicity Communications, and WICT is Women in Cable and Television. I actually volunteered with NAMIC in their events when I was in college. And so that's how I got more exposure to industry and people, and that was a great step. And I think, as Evan was saying, you have to be self-motivated. At this point in your life, you're now adults. And so in order to be a leader, one of the challenges is, staying motivated, but you have to find a way to keep yourself motivated. And if you are motivated, or if you're having challenges being motivated, it might be you're not in the right alignment with the right company, because your values need to be in alignment with what the company's about and what the company's doing. And that's what will keep you that drive. That'll keep you that interest to do these things, to find new opportunities, and to work beyond the scope of what your defined position is.
It's an interesting question. The question is a good question, and this started with what opportunities to lead do you have when you get to our company, and I will answer this. I answer this question a lot for new employees and people who are like just joining our company. And I did this for 20 years at Turner. My answer would be the same. Sometimes people think that their opportunity to lead when they get into a new job and they join a company is to have a lot of ideas. It's real. For me, that's not really it. It's to do a lot of stuff. And so if you have an idea and you're going to actually make it happen, that's it. I've heard a couple of employees say to me, wow, I come up with great ideas and they never do them. And I'm like, what do you mean they? Like, you have a couple of ideas and you never
elevator,
do.
What are we
elevator
paying you
pitches,
for?
Elevator pitches don't
And
work
it's
in this business.
So it's like coming up with things, and in media companies are kind of great because there's no end of potential smart things to do. I mean, there's social media out there now, which makes it even easier. You could come up with a fantastic audience development campaign all on your own and present it to somebody and say, I'm doing this. Just give me permission. I'm starting this tomorrow. And does this, but rather than just throwing out ideas or anything, which I'm sure you have great ideas, but it's not the way necessarily to get into, to demonstrate leadership.
But coming up with those ideas is a great way to get the attention of your bosses. Yesterday I was in a meeting in the morning and we were talking to our ad sales teams, and at my company we have 6 networks, and one of them is Food Network and one of them is HGTV, and our ad sales team was talking about, wow, if we had some really good ideas that put HGTV and Food Network together and we could take it to an advertiser, we could really make some money off of it. About 2 hours later, a young guy on the team who just happened to be listening sent me an email with a brilliant idea that was to do something with the 2 networks together that easily we will take to our ad sales team and they can sell for probably $1 million. So this was a guy, young guy, just sitting in the room. He sends me this idea a couple hours after the conversation has happened. I immediately sent it back. I said, you're in charge of this. You go make it happen. And he will. But it all started because he was listening. One of the most important things you can do when you're sitting in any company, in any meeting, is listen to where the problems are and make it a mandate to yourself to help solve those problems. And then just like you said, you can't just have the idea, you have to have the chutzpah to keep it going. But constantly be listening and figure out what the company's trying to solve, and then just start throwing ideas out that you can then fulfill. But ideas are very valuable.
Yeah, that's a really key thing, listening. Shut up and listen is a really good thing. And if you're going to have an idea, make sure that it solves a problem. Having an idea is great, but if you don't know what problem, there's a great VC question, venture capital question. What problem are you trying to solve? And if you know what that is, you can be successful. Knowing what the problems of your organization are by listening and solving those is really great. But in general, Mark Zuckerberg, we can go down the whole long list of young entrepreneurs who started in college. They found a problem to solve, and in solving it became successful and became leaders.
Yeah. I think one other, I'll sort of tie this back to the current HBO environment. It's to produce, and that means lines of code, because our big focus right now is HBO Go, and we have a huge Seattle operation writing code. So that's where the growth is, that's where the leadership is. Write lines of clean code and you're golden.
Good advice. So now I guess let's turn to the fact that they're currently students that haven't yet graduated. What can they be doing while they're still in school to start on the path to becoming a leader? Who wants to take this one first? You look
Well,
like
during our session, the Ask Me Anything session, I had a great group of people with me, and I see some of them in the room, and we talked a little bit about this. And to me, the thing you can do while you're in school is either you're a content creator yourself, or you find people who are trying to tell stories or create content or create something, and you help them, produce them, market them, help them find their audience. I mean, that's more important than, it's as important as your transcript, it's as important as anything else, but honestly, you want to have a story to tell about how you developed an audience around some content. On any platform, you helped find fans for something, you helped an artist craft their work to make it better, you found somebody with something that wanted to get something across, and you helped them turn that into something that had value to people. And I think that you could do that. I mean, high schoolers are doing it all the time, and they're just not thinking about it. But you can do it intentionally and do it with an eye towards someday this is going to be a great case study of how I did this successfully or how I messed this up horribly, and it will be fun to talk about in an interview either way.
Yep. And go ahead.
I was going to say, and with our group, I shared, it's a good practice to start looking at the companies that you're interested in. And look at the job descriptions that they have, and what are they looking for? What are the skill sets that they're posted? And I used to look at job postings and say, could I confidently apply for this job right now and get it, feel like I could, excel in it, or is there areas I need to work on? And if it was a job I was really interested in, I would actually go back and, take classes and do things that will help me get prepared for that, so I feel confident. So when my time comes to actually apply for a job, I would feel prepared for the role. And so that's a good it's a tool that's out there, resource that's readily available to find job postings.
And it really helps, as the media industry in general, cable probably specifically, is very nuanced. And part of it is do your homework on the industry. If you sat and really deconstructed how the media industry has all these cross ownerships of Comcast owns 10% of this, and knowing that, as well as the copyright stuff of I'm pitching a show and who owns the music and you can't use it on the internet because we've had a lot of shows get thrown out because you couldn't clear the music because now mobile's a big thing and you have this library of content you can't use anymore. Those nuances will help you make that strategic pitch that is a great, you take a great idea but you can't execute on it. That's fun, but it's not really helpful. If you know the nuances of the industry, you can hone your pitch to really be something that might be a home run.
And I would argue in this day and age, the key phrase is get done. Get some done. Scott was saying, help somebody produce something. Yeah, do something. Courtney, who spoke earlier, she started her organization in college. We did a show about a guy named Tom Zaki who started his company in college. It's now a multinational publicly traded company called TerraCycle. When I was in college, I was producing theater. I wanted to make a move when I came to the city, I was working in nonprofit arts, first dance and then theater. Great way to not make money. And I wanted to make a move into television, but I couldn't crack the code. I really couldn't get through. People looked at my resume and said, well, you have no television experience. So I dropped out of theater, started my own business, grew it, over a course of number of years. That was at 27 years old. And when I came back into television and applied for my first job in television, they looked at my resume and they said, oh, you're an entrepreneur. You get done. You can have this job. And that's what the leaders in this industry really respect. When you look at the people who are the giants in the industry now, they have always rolled up their sleeves and just got the done.
Kathleen, what do you think?
Yeah, I would say, and I just want to emphasize what Evan just said. When you're in school, and I shouldn't say this to a group of students, I don't want you to take it the wrong way, but the reality is when we're looking at resumes, I really don't care what classes you've taken. Taking a class is rather passive, but getting done is reactive, and that says that you've got it. So what I would really make sure you're doing when you're in school, don't just go to class and go to parties. You got to get stuff done. Be an intern. Write a column for the paper. Write movie reviews for the paper. Write a blog. Do something that when I'm looking at your resume, it says that you're more than somebody who sat in a classroom for 4 years. No disrespect for sitting in a classroom for 4 years. But it really needs to show that you are an aggressive go-getter who's passionate about the media industry, not somebody who just wants to learn about the media industry. Huge difference between those two things.
You could film the parties and then cut them together into an expose.
Absolutely.
Right. It's like, but figure out
be
the
careful what's
things
on
you're going to
camera.
create.
Look at what Joe did. I mean, they took a GoPro camera, they went on a trip.
Yeah.
They filmed it, they put it up on YouTube, and now there's a channel there. I mean,
well, no, it's a network. It's
right.
the all forearm network.
Right.
I love it. What a concept.
Selfie network. Yeah.
Well, thank you, everybody. We're going to open it up now for Q&A. Does anybody have a question?
I mean, someone, I can't remember who it was, mentioned that, you send a 14-page email, and you tell your whole life story. Yeah, like, that's not appropriate, and you probably won't get read. But a respectful, quick, efficient email, or LinkedIn message, whatever the hell they call that, is a great way. There is really no, in this day and age, we expect it. If we're on LinkedIn, we expect you to reach out. But do it in a respectful way that's quick, says what it is that you want, and gets out of the way.
You know, I have the strangest story because there was a kid who met me at like a marketing event in Atlanta, Georgia, and he came up to me and he said, "I want you to be my mentor." And I was like, "Oh," he introduced himself. I'd like you to be my mentor, and I was like, "I'm so sorry. I have like too many people I'm doing that with. It wouldn't be fair to you. Find somebody else, or I'll find you somebody else." He goes, "No, I would like it to be you, and I will make it really easy for you."
And friend me on Facebook too.
I was like, "You'll make it easy for me? How?" And he goes, "Well, just do it via email, and I won't hit you up with too many emails." So I said, "Okay, let's try this." So he sent me a question through email, and it was a good question. I gave him a respectful answer, and I didn't hear from him for a long time. And about 2 months later, he wrote, "Scott, thank you for your advice. Here's what I did with it." And it led me to another question. And then he asked me a second question. And then, so we played this mentorship thing for we've done it for 6 years, and he wound up working at Turner where I worked, and we kept the relationship the exact same way. His name is Derek Tarver. I still say, "Derek, you're like the perfect mentee," because literally 2 months later he's reflected something I said, and then he's told me how he applied it and some thing that happened because of it. So I said, weirdly enough, I think you're my mentor because I'm learning how my advice works in the thing, and it's so great. So I think approaching it it might be different for every person and everything, and not to get flown by that. I totally agree with what Evan said, though. It's it's not about, indulging. It's about, just using a sounding board and watching.
There's a word that is missing a lot in society, and I think that the digital age has made it hard to experience this because everything comes through diodes, but empathy. If you can have empathy for the person you're reaching out to, and you can sympathize with how difficult I know you're very busy. Yeah. That word, that's a key element to leadership that fewer people than should have it do.
Yeah. And one thing I will say, I've had people ask me, "So who else can you introduce me to?" Yeah. They want me to be their hookup. And so, try to just have some tact, in your approach, and also being a little too familiar. It's better to err on a little more conservative side, be a little more formal in your introductions, and then as you get to know the rapport of the person, you can figure out their communication style.
Some of my mentors, by the way, have no idea that they were my mentors. Literally, I've just been watching them. And sometimes I might meet them and pay attention to them and everything. But I love the industry, so I pay attention to a lot of the personalities. I knew of every person on this panel, and I don't know them. But I knew their careers, and I knew what they were up to, and I've watched them and everything. So I think you pay attention to that, and they're, that's how you do it.
Oh. Guess that's it. Sorry. Thank you guys. That was amazing.
Thank you.